While I was getting ready for this talk, I sort of thought about why would anyone come to hear me talk, and I think there might be sort of a desire to hear about what it's like to do a project like I do, to stick up posters on the street, maybe some stories about the confrontations I have with racist people around the country, and I can share a bit of that with you as well. But ultimately, you come to a thing like this because you want to sort of understand a little bit more about the world and try to bring some clarity to the chaos that we see all around us, especially when we sort of look at our news feed or just pay any attention to the media. There's a lot of noise and conflict out there. But when you have a really good conversation with somebody and you have those sort of shared moments of understanding, and you come out of it with a sort of a feeling of clarity, and the world feels like it makes more sense. But within time, you sort of forget what it is that exactly what it is that you said, and there's sort of a feeling left of a relationship. But what art can do is sort of freeze those moments in time. They can capture the exact thing which brought clarity to your sort of understanding of the world, can freeze it and share it forever. So that's really what hopefully we can feel today. I've done a few talks like this, and I always find them very helpful in terms of clarifying everything that I go through, because I sort of do a stock take of all the events over the project. And so yeah, I'm looking forward to the discussion at the end of it, and hopefully I can learn something out of it as well. So we should start this thing. So that's a photo of me in Perth in May last year, sticking up the Real Australian Say Welcome project. And I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about street art in general and public space, and using it as a forum for expression, because public space is a ancient forum in which we can sort of discuss things, express ourselves. It's not just a place for commuting and advertising. It's where you can say things that are meaningful. And what's most interesting about street art and graffiti for me is it's kind of a conflict between two massive forces of civilization, and those things are the freedom of expression and the sanctity of private property. And graffiti and street art is a place where those two things conflict, and it's sort of an irreconcilable conflict when you're sort of expressing yourself using someone else's property. And the fact that it's irreconcilable, and private property is important, expression is important. I love the fact that that conflict is always going to be there, and that's exactly where I like to sort of locate my art practice. It took me a while to sort of figure that out, but at the start it was just like, wow, you can stick things to other people's property. That's awesome. But anyway, I want to with this talk sort of go through a quick journey of how I got to be doing what I am, and sort of the understanding I built up, and at the end of it we can have a chat about just sort of the world view, which is hopefully expressed through the work itself. So, cool. This is one of the first pieces of street art I ever made. When I started doing street art, I was exhibiting paintings, and I was living with another street artist. He used to go out and tag, and I thought, oh, stencils, that would be a lot of fun. And I was really into bikes and environmental concerns. All of my early street art was all about bikes, and so I thought I'll make a bike park. And the way these would work is that people would sort of just see the shape there and go, oh, it's a disabled park, or there's something written there, I can't park there. So I would sort of put it on the park and then sort of stand back and just watch cars go past, leaving alone, because it sort of it sort of interferes with the way people, it sort of disrupts reality for people, and it's I sort of found that really fascinating as a way of subverting public space, and it makes it different to any other art form, because you sort of bring the art to the public rather than people coming to a gallery and going, all right, I'm going to see some art, it's going to be shocking, And doing it this way, you can sort of snap people into thinking about something when they were just going through their day-to-day life. So that was one thing that really got me into it. This was the first piece of street art I did that really sort of that took off in a way. So it says on the first side, this one runs on fat and saves you money. On the other side, this one runs on money and makes you fat. And so this was made to sort of be a meme, and people sort of picked it up and put it on T-shirts, and every now and then I bump into someone who's wearing it on a T-shirt that someone printed in Thailand, and I just think, it's awesome. It's sort of gone all over the world, and it will kind of live on for that reason, because it, in a way, it sort of clarifies an idea down to something which is funny and ironic. So this whole idea of the power of memes comes into the work later on as well. Okay, I'd like to quickly show you a video. This was the first big project I did. I wanted to do something that really, I'll just show you this.
Stagger Lee was a bad man. They goes down in the coal mine one night. Robbed the coal mine. There's gambling down there. And they placed themselves just like they wanted to be, so they wouldn't hit each other when they were shooting. Money lying all over the floor. There's one bad guy down there, he thought he was. That's Billy DeLine. So he had a big 45 laying down by the side of him. When they got placed.
So that's making glue.
Why, Stagger Lee spoke to him. He says, boys, look at the money lying down here on the floor. Says, what would we do if Stagger Lee and them was to walk in here? This guy picked up his 45. He says, I wouldn't make a bit of difference. Says, Stag's gun won't shoot a bit harder than this one. About that time, Stag knocked his hat off. And his partner taking care of the rest. When he knocked his hat off, he kind of remembered that was Stagger Lee. And he come as begging like this.
So the images were from the South Australian Archive, and they were all criminals convicted of pretty much innocuous crimes, things like being drunk and disorderly, attempted suicide, sodomy, things that are no longer considered criminal acts. And so I thought that it would be interesting to contrast them to what I was doing, which was illegal as well. And the end result was that I put up about 24 of these really large pay stubs. We will see them. And they didn't really have very much explanation behind them. No one knew who had done them. And so they became a talking point. People would talk to one another about who'd done them and what they were. And eventually sort of the media wanted to find out. And the council tracked me down as well. And it was an interesting learning experience working with an institution, because the council said to me, look, Peter, we want to keep these things because everybody likes them, but you've done it illegally. So in order for us to not fulfill our obligations to property owners and clean them off, we want you to agree to ask for permission from all the property owners who you've already vandalized their property. And so they know that I'm not going to do this, but if I agreed to do it, then they could say, well, Peter's agreed to do it. And so that's exactly what I did. And so you sort of learn to play these games along the way. They were beautiful images, beautiful photographs. And they were taken from a time when police mugshots were taken by professional portrait photographers. And you can imagine some of these photographs, it was possibly the only photograph these people ever had taken. So you get this amazing mix of shame and also pride and confusion, because the lady you saw earlier had been convicted of attempted suicide. Sort of it's strange to think that was a crime. And probably the major thing that I learned out of there is the power of sort of nostalgia of history, sort of the pull that people have towards that. Suddenly something that was done illegally became sort of, people wanted to accept it, or the council wanted to accept it. And that was, made me think about how I could sort of fit within that space and still get away with it basically by making it sort of valuable to the public, but still have sort of a message behind it. And so I went to Glasgow. Whoa. So after that project, I went to the Glasgow School of Art for a year and studied there. And while I was there, I sort of discovered that I was an Australian, because when you're living in Australia, you don't really realise that. No one really sort of imposes it upon you, or you're just a person. You're not sort of an Australian. It's just a sort of a pretty illusory collective identity. But you go overseas and people impose it upon you. They say, oh, there's Peter, he's the Australian guy. He's probably all Australian, you know. And so I thought, you know, this is silly, but, you know, why not sort of investigate it, think about what it means, and maybe it could be a sort of a subject for art, because identity is very interesting, especially when you don't have much choice about it. And so I thought about what it means to be Australian, what I liked about it, what I wanted to change about it. And at that time, the Australian federal election in 2013 was on, and both major parties were promising to stop the boats. And that phrase, stop the boats, seemed absurd to me coming from a nation of immigrants. And so I, on an impulse, and all of my art up until now had been completely apolitical. I didn't like political art, still don't like political art. It's can be very self-righteous and lacking humour and irony. But I thought, look, I want to do this, let's see what happens. So I made a poster and went down to London and stuck these up sort of in the last week of the election. And this is one that was actually in Adelaide. But so it says, Australia says, stop the boats. To avoid Aboriginal genocide, stop Great Britain's illegal migration to Australia. And so there's a boat of a sailing ship, which I took from a painting of the First Fleet. And so this might well capture sort of the dark irony of Australia's identity. But it doesn't really offer very much of a solution. And I think art should try to do that. It's not really good enough to just sort of point and laugh at people's follies. So when I got back to Australia, I started working on a new project.
It's very dangerous for Hazara to live in Pakistan and Afghanistan. When the people been there for praying and playing football, the kids and the men with the rocket and with the gun, with the bomb, they blasted, killed so many people, like injured kids, women, men, and they keep dying, keep killing. We don't have the reason why is that they keep killing us. I was so scared, my family was scared, and my mom decided I have to leave the country. It was too dark, very small boat, broken in a big hole. And they just put you on the boat. They doesn't care, like, you know, what's gonna happen to you, you're gonna fall out in the water. They said, we're gonna put you about 70 people, and they put 123 people. There was a kid, a family, and they just start the boat very fast, very dangerous. And the boat was like jumping 6 meters and bang you on the water. I'm still, when I remember, I get scared. Nobody should come by boat because it's really scary, very dangerous. Because of boat, I was vomited and I was really sick. And when they took me to the doctor straight away, it was a very beautiful experience. The nurse was really friendly and she treated me very well. That was big difference to Pakistan and Afghanistan because they see you poor, rich or royal. If you are poor, never they will come straight away to see you. They will put you somewhere and they don't care. In detention center in Tasmania and Christmas Island, when we came, it was first time we attended the classes. You know, the teacher was very nice. I was shocked when I saw first that the teacher was too friendly, very nice. My home is, for me, I think Australia is my home now. Oh, my mom! Oh! Oh my God! But my family, they are in Pakistan, Quetta. My mom, my sister, and my brother, I'm missing them every day. Ah, look at me. My hope is to have my life in Australia, have a safe life and successful life and good life.
The song being sung is a song called Bound to South Australia. It's an old sort of colonial song, I guess, about coming to South Australia. And it's being sung by actually my wife and her family. They're very musical, so I just got them together and said, look, can you sing this song for me? We couldn't find a good version of it anyway. So the project was based on drawings by asylum seekers. When I got back from Glasgow to Australia, I started making contact with asylum seekers in and out of detention and giving them sketchbooks. And I was really looking for somebody who loved art and who would sort of tell a complete story. And that the voice was Ali, and he was he's born in Afghanistan, and he grew up in Pakistan, and he told his whole story, and it was very nuanced and atypical, I guess. But the thing is, there's a lot I can say about. What I wanted to do is create a situation where people could empathise with Ali, because that's really what's missing. That's Ali's mother saying goodbye to him, because she sort of said, you have to leave Quetta. And there was a big explosion, and that was when he was told he had to leave. So it is, very emotive stuff, but sort of getting that amount of detail and nuance over is very difficult. Unless you'd seen this project before, you probably never heard of this project that I did. It doesn't sort of have that sort of viral capacity that a very sort of short, punchy slogan has. And so, but on the same token, it does allow people to sort of empathise with asylum seekers. So I thought, what's the next step? How can I do it better next time? There's a closer image of that one. So, but after that, I decided on the campaign Real Australians Say Welcome. And what I liked about this, and what the vast majority of people got out of it, I think, is that it's a parody of nationalism. There's no such thing as a real Australian, but people sort of use that sort of phrase or that sort of understanding of nationalism to sort of to impose, I guess, racial, ethnic, religious norms. And so by saying Real Australians Say Welcome, it subverts nationalism in a kind of obvious way, because think about what a national identity is. It's about, or any sort of identity is based on having an in-group and an out-group. And if you're in the in-group, you're in, and the out-group, you're out. But if you, in order to be part of that group, you have to say welcome to people outside of it, it basically collapses the whole idea of what nationalism is. And so I stuck up 1,000 of these around the country, and the whole thing was crowdfunded, and it went very well. I think the most interesting thing about it, there's a lot of things I could say about it, but hang on, this was sort of one of the best moments from the campaigns. So yeah, there's Tan Hug Quinn, and she now, I don't know if she owns it, but she definitely runs Pauline Hanson's fish and chip shop. What used to be Pauline Hanson's fish and chip shop. And I heard that was the situation. I sort of went to Ipswich just on a whim, and then I thought, oh, that was Ipswich, Pauline Hanson, I'll see if that fish and chip shop was there. And she was lovely. She didn't really know who Pauline Hanson was. She sort of said to me, oh, the shop used to be owned by a famous lady. And I said, oh, can I take your photo of my poster? And she said, and she was a little bit nervous. And I said, well, maybe, the shop's been owned by one famous lady. Maybe we can have another famous lady. And she was like, oh, it should be fun. But so she was really nice. And she spoke to me a while about how she came over here. But there's sort of a delicious irony in this because, I don't know, I think a lot of Pauline Hanson supporters perhaps forget that she made a name for herself by fearing Asians. She famously stood up in Parliament and said, we're in danger of being swamped by Asians, multiculturalism doesn't work. They don't integrate all the same rhetoric, and now she's doing it again, but now she wants us all to be afraid of Muslims. So, but this is what I really wanted to speak about with the Real Australians Say Welcome campaign. It became a meme. I sort of hoped that it would, but it took a lot of help from other people. This really happened when the Design Files, which is a design blog, sort of had a competition. They said anyone who redesigns the slogan will reshare it on our platform. Their platform had a lot of people following it, so they incentivized the whole thing. And so artists, designers, illustrators, you name it, they got behind the project and took ownership of it and just really demonstrated how much support there was out there for the idea. And that makes it sort of incredibly powerful, and that's something I wanted to sort of carry across into projects in the future. So I think it's also absolutely worth pointing out that political art lies. That's sort of what it does. Because if you think about it, the truth might be that real Australians don't say welcome, the majority of them at least. So this statistic is from 2015. 86% of Australians believe immigrants improve our society, culture and economy, yet 65% of Australians support stronger measures to exclude illegal immigrants or believe in that there is such a thing as illegal migration. And so I'll go back to this later at the end and talk about my worldview and how political art really works and how all art is, the word artifice, it is based on illusions, and it's about sort of reforming people's illusions, because you can't really just strip people of their illusions and turn them into cool nihilists, because people need illusions, and sometimes the best you can do is work with the illusions you have. But I'll say more about that later. Okay, so after Real Australians Say Welcome, I wanted to sort of expand the idea a bit and go into the history of Australia, because I had sort of learnt how powerful that could be through the mugshots and that I'd done earlier. And so I researched Australia's the history of Muslims in Australia. I was particularly interested in the Cameleers, and that was really my beginning point, but it sort of expanded out from there. And because I'd always known about the Ghan, the railway line in South Australia. And it's kind of like a time capsule in a way. If it wasn't for that train and just the name of that train, then I probably wouldn't know about why there were so many camels in Australia, who had brought them here, and the situation around how they had stayed and was sort of crucial for that part of Australia's history. So this was this year's project. The man in the poster is Monga Khan. And he was born in what is today India. He came to Australia, and after he came here, they brought in the White Australia policy. And the White Australia policy basically meant that if you weren't white, you couldn't come to Australia. But what's the government going to do with all these non-white people already living in the country? So they created exemptions so those people could leave the country and come back to Australia, because these people were contributing to the economy, they were valuable, but sort of inconvenient. And so because of that sort of great little bit of hypocrisy, we have all these amazing photographs of Australia's diversity, basically, before the White Australia policy and still during it. So Monga Khan went back to India on several occasions, and the reason I picked his photograph is because it was really just a terrific photograph. I looked through a couple of archives in Adelaide and in Melbourne, and his stood out just because I think the pride but also the composition. It's just a sort of a technically great photograph. But I did also pick him because he was a Muslim male, and I think Muslim men especially have a incredibly sort of undue amount of fear directed at them, and so I wanted to try to pop that bubble in some way and create a door so that people could learn a bit more about Australia's history. So this is how the very first day of the project I launched in Cronulla. I thought that was an interesting place to go back to, because growing up, Cronulla was synonymous with race riots, basically. And the people in Cronulla don't think of it that way. They think of the beach, and I don't think they realise how much that stuck with the rest of Australia and what it did to the Southern Cross and the rest of it. So these nice two locals were having coffee by the looks of it, and I sort of asked whether they'd like to get behind the project. They didn't know who I was or anything, so it was really nice. And that's one thing I really love about the project, is being out in the street, meeting people, hearing their stories, and sort of, yeah, being in public space and it being a place where you can sort of talk about these sort of things. The project had, I'll show you the full set in a minute, but in total 7 people that I just picked, basically at random from the archive. Although I did want to get a bit of a spread. If you look in the archive, I'd say it's probably about half the people are Chinese. The other half are mostly sort of Indian, Afghan, and I guess from the Middle East. But I wanted to show you sort of a selection, and I picked photographs that just sort of jumped out at me because they had some sort of quality. Sometimes it's just the way the person looks, and you connect with it. It leaves you wanting to know more. That's the crucial thing, because hopefully what the photographs do is so what the posters do is they convey the message. It shows a non-typical Aussie, and it's stating that they are Aussie, so you get the idea, but you don't really know any more than that. You don't know where it came from, who did it, and so you want to know more. Then you talk to somebody else, and it becomes a conversation. Whereas advertising, it explains itself fully. You know, it's got the email address. So many people said to me, "Why didn't you say Humonga Khan and put a date and let it explain itself?" And the answer is because if you see it and it explains itself, you go, "There's my answer," and then you get on with your day, and that's not sort of as effective. Right, so that's the whole group. Just give me one sec. Pardon me. So this is a big wall in Adelaide where I've stuck stuff up in the past, and I still put them up without permission, but the security guard came out while I was doing it, and I sort of said, I explained the project and told him how I'd stuck things to that wall before, and he was fine with it. It's just unbelievable. But I go out wearing a high-vis vest and really prepared to, talk to the merits of what I'm doing. And if someone says, "This is my property, don't put it here," then I say, "Well, that's fine," and walk on. And that's one of the reasons why I like doing paste ups and not sort of aerosol. If I was going around with a spray can trying to achieve this, it would be a very different story. And I use wheat paste, so it is possible to take them off. Like, I could quite easily add a synthetic glue to it and make it a lot stronger, but it's not really the point. The point is to just keep it there for a while, and then eventually it comes down. All right, so these on your left is Harjit and his mate Afi, and so Harjit's Sikh, Afi's Muslim. So I like this because you got and Afi is holding the Sikh guy, Harjit is holding the Muslim guy, and so you've got 2 Muslims and 2 Sikhs, 4 Aussies. That was the idea anyway, and they're both champs and very sort of welcoming. That was in Perth, and I'd only been to Perth the one time before for the Real Australian project, so they welcomed me there, and we had a great chat about the difficulties of spreading acceptance. But Harjit runs a program called Turbans for Trust, which he sort of asked to put turbans on people, and as he does it, he sort of talks about what it means to be Sikh, and sort of the bond that the turban is like a promise to protect other people and fight injustice, and part of Sikhism is sort of a secular religion in some ways, in that it recognises other people's faiths. And so I actually went with Harjit to his Sikh temple, and he asked me to put up these 2 posters in their langar hall, which is where they eat. So there's now a poster of a Muslim guy up in a Sikh temple in Perth, and it really blew me away, because I thought that all religions are sort of equally isolationist in a way. But he was very, what I'm basically saying is that I've learned a lot through this project. I don't sort of, I'm not a scholar, I don't sort of learn it all and then deploy the project on the world. I really expect to learn as much as I can as I'm doing it. This is Stephen Oliver from Black Comedy. I don't know if you guys know that show on the ABC, and he sent this, just posted on my page. I'd never met him before, and so I was just a bit starstruck, really. That's why I'm sharing this one with you. But I've since chatted to him about it, and I've spoken to him about the next project I want to do next year, and he had some really good advice about that. I'll sort of get to that at the end. This is Abdullah Khalik, and he was born in Broken Hill, and the photo was taken in 1923. He actually died, I think, about 8 years after that. It's a bit hard to see in the poster, but he's got he's wearing crutches. He's also got a pocket watch, which is, he was actually quite well off, or at least his father was. His father, this is Abdul Khalik. His father was Abdullah Khalik, and Abdullah was born in Karachi, and he came over to Australia, worked as a cameleer, married an Aboriginal lady. They had 2 kids, and then Abdul had his photo taken, and with his sister, to travel with their father back to Karachi and then meet their stepbrothers, and everyone, the whole family, came back over to Australia, and the 2 stepbrothers became successful cameleers as well. And Abdullah was quite wealthy, sort of comparatively, to other cameleers. He was successful, and apparently had a road named after him in Alice Springs. And so it's interesting how the history of the cameleers connects to the history of Aboriginal Australians. And there are great sort of love stories within that, of people meeting and not being allowed to marry, so they'd elope from Western Australia to South Australia. And great stories that are sort of that we should make so much more of, basically. And so I want to come to some sort of a summary in what I've learnt between these 2 projects and where I can take it for the next project. One of the big things about Real Australians Say Welcome was its capacity to be a meme. And you can't really do that with a person, though. You can't at least it's not as easy. But on the same token, there are advantages to having a person's face on the poster, because if you look at Real Australians Say Welcome, it doesn't speak to migrant communities as much as the face of Monga Khan does. And with this project, I've had far more people from especially the Sikh and Islamic community getting in touch and sort of saying thanks for what I'm doing, and I've realised that's it's getting through more in that way. So, but how can you turn Monga Khan into a meme? You can't really do that, but you can create a legend around him. You can, it can be an exercise in mythology, and this is what art and other creative people can do, which historians can't do in a way. Because Australia has a mythology around it already. We've got our Ned Kellys and our Waltzing Matildas. Why not have and the thing is about Australian folk heroes is that they express themselves through their contempt for authority. And I remember learning this as a kid, like, what? So he's stealing a jumbuck, right? This is Waltzing Matilda. He's putting this jumbuck into a tucker bag, which must have been massive. Doesn't make sense. But and so the story ends with him killing himself. Like, this is a good thing, and everyone's like, yeah, this is Australia. And I thought, well, okay, well, but why can't we have an Aussie folk hero who expresses his contempt for authority toward the white Australia policy? And so I thought, how do you do this? How do you create a mythology? You commission artists to do that, and do it quite openly, and sort of say it's historic fiction, because there is a real man called Monga Khan, but the real man was a hawker. He worked in Victoria, but the legend could be anything. And so I raised more money than what I needed through my crowdfunding campaign. I started commissioning other artists, but especially writers and poets, to imagine the life of Monga Khan. And I asked specifically for people who had a sort of knowledge of the migrant experience. And that's what I was going to do. I'd like to show you one of the best things that come out of that yet. So what's going to come out before the end of the year is a collection of short stories and poems by all the contributors. And that's sort of, we've collected about half of them. I mean, all the sort of commissioning process is done. I've never sort of published a book before, but it's apparently not as hard as what you might think. You know, I shouldn't say that. Let me show you. So this is Manal Yunus, who's a poet, spoken word artist in Adelaide, and I've worked with her before in a bunch of projects, but I asked her to imagine the life of Monga Khan, and this is what she came up with.
Monga, tell us a story. I lift my head to see Sultan on the camel before me. He should not be leading. He needs to be minding the readings. He should be on the camel with the Quran scrolls behind Jamal and the bread rolls. He tries to distract me. Mixing his Farsi folk songs with words from Pitangara to sidetrack me, I decide to play along. Pat my beast on the neck and begin telling our history as we continue our trek. I place the end of the softwood on my teeth to brush away the day's breath. When we reach our post, we cue the camels. As usual, Harpreet is last. His camel has the shortest legs, like him. He wears the biggest turban. He says it's because he has the most brains, but we all know it's just his head. He'll join the brothers for their sunset reras before they sit around the campfire and speak of scriptures and gurus, while the rest of us race the sun to bow down and proclaim that God is one. When we return, we'll learn the patterns of the stars. And someone always says, Monga, tell us a story. They call me Sheikh because I'm the one who knows all the folk tales, because the ink stick never sits idly between my fingertips, and because I'm the one who notices things. Like how yesterday morning was strange. I saw the wind change right before the dust raged, and then we quickly rearranged our campfire before the sandstorm came. And then, all day, I watched the wind dance with the sand, spiraling into stories that I'm yet to understand. And as I felt the red dirt on my skin, I remembered my motherland. We sit by the fire and talk of our destination. It's been months since we were up north. I rehearsed a little bit of Malay that Bintang taught me last time we met there. Together with his wife and daughters, we would practice the language that the white men taught us while we watched the eyes of freshwater crocodiles and listened to the blue-green lullabies carried on the breeze of this land of ancient tales, this land that God seems to speak to. Blessed with black hands that best handle the blistering blaze of the harshest suns, I tell tales to their most timid men and listen to their wisest. For I am forever learning the ways of people. I came here carrying stories beneath this head wrap while I ride camelbacks after walking ship decks that sail over shipwrecks between whole worlds. I am a world away from where I was birthed, but here I will build my stories, and here I will stay.
I'm always impressed when I see that, because it's all I had to do was set up the camera, and Manal just sort of did the rest. Although one of the things I loved about it the most is that she made Monga Khan an everyday person. You know, it was sort of, he had a sense of humour, he had friends, and that's something that historians can't really do. You think about what mythology is. I mean, just think about what's happened in this room today. If you tried to create a historical record of it, how impossible that would be. You could have the text of everything I've said and all the images. You could sort of video the whole thing, but you couldn't really record all the things that you've thought. You can't sort of condense reality down into sort of a copy or simulacrum of what it really was. So what mythology does is imagines and sort of and it can basically create an idea of what it was like to be a person. And through story, you can then empathize and in a way even want to be a person from the past. And that's a very powerful thing, because you can think sort of there's a line of empathy from the past to the present. And history has trouble with that. I mean, historians do mythologize, but they're not really meant to. So if you're creating mythology and you're saying that's what it is, you're saying this is imaginary, I think it can be a very valuable thing. I don't know how long I've been speaking. Yep. Cool. Okay. The one thing I wanted to speak about before I sort of open it up a bit more, so take questions, all that sort of thing, so what I'd like to do next year. Now, if you look at these two posters, they're both about what it means to be Australian and the idea of welcome. But who gets to say welcome? I mean, who owns this place? And so if you're going to be making posters about Australian national identity, at some point you need to address the way we all relate to Aboriginality. And so that's really what I'm thinking about doing next year. And I'm still in the very early stages of doing that. I do have sort of a few ideas, but at the moment what I'm doing is speaking to a lot of people about it, their ideas about how to do it, how not to do it. And it has to be something collaborative, I think, because that's what makes it more powerful when other people are involved as well. So with that, I'd like to say thanks very much for coming.